I'm Linda Campbell from the Horizon Center School of Hypnotherapy. If you've been looking into hypnotherapy training, you've probably noticed there's a lot of different approaches, a lot of different styles, even a lot of different personalities teaching hypnosis. It can be kind of confusing to figure out what the right program is for you. So in this video, I want to talk a bit about my approach to hypnotherapy so that you can make an informed decision whether it's to train with me or to train with somebody else. And so in order to explain a bit about my program and what makes it different from other training you may have looked into, I want to share a little bit about my background with hypnosis and how I've kind of evolved over time. So when I was trained in 1998, I was basically taught to give suggestions, kind of like positive affirmations, to a client who was just passively receiving them in hypnosis. So for example, if somebody had issues with sleep, I'd put them into hypnosis, the theory being get them as deep as you can and then you could just tell them what to do. I would say things like you get to sleep easily, you sleep through the night, you wake up refreshed, that sort of thing. Now, I never really felt that comfortable with this way of doing hypnosis. And when I had my first weight loss client, I figured out why. So this woman came to see me for portion control. She basically wanted me to tell her to eat smaller portions. So we did a couple sessions doing just that. Eat smaller portions. You're satisfied with a smaller amount. Well, what happened was a bit of a surprise for both her and myself. She actually started gaining weight. Not the result she was looking for. Certainly not the result I wanted to get for her. So in our third session, I did something I'd never done before, and it was really just motivated by frustration and not knowing what else to do for this client. I said aloud when she was in hypnosis, there's got to be some reason why you're not following the suggestions I'm giving you. Much to my surprise, the client started talking. She started telling me about being 7 years old and being taken to see her grandmother who was in hospice at the time. My client didn't really understand what was going on. She just saw that grandma was getting skinnier, 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 and then at one point died. And I realized when she told me this story that she had a belief from way back then that weight loss and death were somehow associated. And here I'm telling her, eat smaller portions. Of course she was gaining weight. Her subconscious was thinking I was trying to kill her. If the subconscious has a belief that taking off weight is going to be dangerous for you, it's not just going to take in a suggestion to do so. So that session changed a lot of things for me. I realized a lot of things that I had never been taught. I realized that suggestions don't work, even if they're positive suggestions, the suggestions the client wants to hear, if there's something else going on under the surface. I learned that people can speak in hypnosis, that it's possible for the client to communicate to me when we're in session. And I realized that clients can have insights into their symptoms and can share that with you. Now, I was kind of motivated or inspired, I don't know what caused it during that session when she shared that with me, to present what I now think of as a hypnotic argument. I started saying to her that her grandmother didn't die of being thin, her grandmother died of her illness, that taking weight off with me wasn't going to make her ill, in fact it was going to make her healthier, that if she felt like she was worse off for taking off weight, she could just stop following the suggestions. She'd already proven to me that she didn't have to follow them. Now, interestingly, when I took that approach, the client started taking weight off. I never had to talk about reducing portions or eating a smaller amount. She just started taking weight off on her own. So that session really informed how I work with my clients and how I teach my students. So there's a lot of problems with just giving suggestions, what I think of as old-timey hypnosis, even though there's a lot of hypnotists still doing this. First off, just giving suggestions requires the client to have a lot of depth. And not everybody goes that deeply into hypnosis. Only about 10% of the population goes so deep that they can take in hypnotic suggestions like that. The other 90% needs us to do something else. Now, there can be a lot of reasons why a person doesn't go that deep. It can be anxiety or nervousness or unfamiliarity. In the beginning, people are kind of curious and nervous, and so they might hang out a little lighter in order to make sure that they're taken care of. And people just have a natural tendency to go to their own range in hypnosis, and to try to push somebody deeper than what is natural for them can interfere with rapport. And also, the thing that a person is coming to see me about can also dictate what depth they're going to go into. For example, if I'm working with a client who has difficulty letting go, difficulty with trust, difficulty with a person in a position of authority, they might hang out a little bit lighter because to let go is uncomfortable with them. They might see me as an authority, so they want to hang out and make sure that I'm handling everything well. Or they're just not somebody who trusts that easily, and so they need to make sure they're taken care of, which means, again, hanging out a little bit lighter. So giving suggestions requires the person be really deep, and the people who come to see me therapeutically tend to not fall into that category. Now, another problem with just giving suggestions is that the client can hear what I'm saying when they're in hypnosis, and they can interfere with those suggestions with their own thoughts. So a lot of people think that being in hypnosis is the same as being asleep or unconscious or unaware. Hypnosis is none of those things. Most people are following me. They can hear what's being said. So here's the problem. If a person is in a state of hypnosis and I'm saying, you're going to get great sleep, you're going to sleep through the night, you're going to wake up refreshed, and they're sitting there thinking, I'm a terrible sleeper. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I don't wake up refreshed ever. If they're taking in what I'm saying, but they're also taking in their own thoughts because the subconscious doesn't differentiate between those two different forms of input, their thoughts are basically going to neutralize all of my suggestions. If they're taking into their subconscious, I'm a terrible sleeper, or that suggestion isn't true, I'm not good at public speaking, or whatever they're thinking, it's going to wipe out whatever the positive suggestion is that I'm giving them. And another problem with just giving suggestions, there's so many problems, is even if the person does go super deep, even if they are in that 10% of the population that tends to go deep, there can still be other things going on underneath the surface that need to be addressed in order for the person to take in the suggestions. Let me take you back to my weight loss client. I could have done 1,000 sessions on her. She could have been super deep. But if I'm saying something that her subconscious is construing as being dangerous to her, she's not going to take in that suggestion. There's a misconception about hypnosis that just being in hypnosis makes you open to whatever you're being told. Not true. The subconscious is all about self-preservation. It wants to protect you. It's also the illogical part of the mind. So if I'm giving you a suggestion in hypnosis that the subconscious thinks is going to be harmful to you, it's not going to take it in, even if it's a good suggestion. So we really need to identify what's going on underneath the surface and address that in order to make the person able to take in the suggestions. And so I want to give you a few case studies to illustrate what I'm talking about here. So a number of years ago, I had somebody contact me that I now think of as my belly button client. She contacted me after doing a year's worth of weekly therapy on an issue that she just couldn't figure out. She was having a real difficult time with her belly button. So initially it started with she couldn't touch that area, couldn't wear a waistband that went across her belly button, no sexual contact down there. Then she saw a belly button exposed on somebody else in public, and she had a full-blown panic attack and had to go home. Then she's flipping through the TV stations at home, saw a belly button on TV, and had another panic attack, couldn't watch TV anymore. In fact, she would start getting panicky if she even just looked at the remote. Anybody who's ever struggled with anxiety knows that after a while, the anxiety becomes about when is that going to happen again. So this client started seeing a therapist, trying to figure out what was going on. And after a year's worth of therapy and all that money and time she put in, was basically drawing a blank. So she came to see me because she figured that she had some kind of repressed sexual trauma and that hypnosis would help her identify what was going on. Now let me just pause here for a second and say, I don't take anybody back to relive trauma, nor do I make an assumption about where we're going to go back to. You got to be really careful about how you help a person identify where their symptoms have come from. I'm working with the creative mind. If I put somebody in hypnosis and said, go back to the sexual trauma that's responsible for your belly button issue, her subconscious, the creative mind, could make up a memory. So you've got to be really careful, and this is one of the things I pride myself on teaching properly. You've got to be careful helping the client to identify where their symptoms come from, that you're not leading them, that you're not suggesting where they're going to go to. So back to the belly button client. I got her in hypnosis and we were looking for where did her symptoms come from, and she had a memory come to mind while she was in hypnosis. She remembered being 2 years old in the bathtub fiddling with her belly button, and her mom, who was in the room, said, oh, you don't want to unscrew that or your legs are going to drop off. Boom, boom. My client was like, that can't be it. I have huge symptoms. I'm barely leaving my house. She assumed that because her symptoms were so intense and so big and so persistent, that she must also have an equally big reason for having these symptoms. But I see this kind of stuff all the time in my practice. The mind is a fascinating thing. The subconscious is illogical and it wants to protect you. And it doesn't update messages. If we take in a message from our mom who, we believe she's this big person who knows everything, that if we unscrew our belly button, our legs are going to drop off. If that message gets taken into your subconscious, it can just hold on to that message forever. So again, I did a hypnotic argument with this client in hypnosis. I basically said to her, this is totally untrue. This is physically impossible. If it were true that we could lose our legs having our belly button touched, how are people wearing pants? How are people getting belly button piercings? How am I able to wear something with a waistband right now? Now, I'm sure that client was in hypnosis going, this is stupid. I know this already. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But her subconscious was probably going, oh my gosh. Oh, wow, this is true. I'm so sorry. My bad. My client didn't think that that was the reason. I told her, I'll follow up with you in a week, and if you still have symptoms, we can go further. When I followed up with her in a week, all of her symptoms were gone. The big mystery, which we never solved, she didn't need to come back, she was feeling fine, was why did that stay underground for all the time that it did? She was 27 or 28 when she came to see me, and I'd been working on it for a year or so. So how come something caused that belief to become active when she was 25, 26? That was the big mystery that I will never get an answer to. But it's not about me. So again, you can see how if I just gave this person suggestions, touch your belly button, I don't even know what I would say for the full hour, we never would have gotten anywhere. If the subconscious thinks there is some harm that's going to come to you by taking in a suggestion, it's not going to take in that suggestion. You have to figure out what's going on underneath the surface. Another example that I want to share with you was a client who came to see me for sleep issues. He was having a really, really difficult time and had been for years getting a decent sleep. So again, we looked for what is the cause of this in hypnosis. And what it stemmed back to was he came home from school one day when he was 6, 7, 8 years old, somewhere there. And the dog was missing. Usually the dog came and greeted him. So he asked his parents what had happened to the dog. And what he was told was we had to have it put to sleep. Now, he didn't really understand what that meant, but again, developed an association from way back then that sleep is this scary, mysterious place where bad stuff can happen. And if the subconscious thinks something's harmful to you, it's not going to do it. So again, I could have done 1,000 sessions with this client on you're getting to sleep easily, you're sleeping through the night. But without actually identifying what was going on beneath the surface, we never would have moved forward. The third example I want to share with you was a client who came to see me for smoking. He shared with me that he was 28 when he started smoking, which seemed really late in life to pick up a smoking habit. So I was asking him during the consultation what was going on in his life at that time. What did he think was contributing to his smoking? He told me that he got his first real job. Everybody at the work site smoked, and so he was smoking to fit in with his colleagues and also to manage the stress of the new job. And so I'm working those angles in hypnosis. There's other ways to manage stress. You don't need to smoke to fit in, all of that kind of patter. And a couple sessions in, we weren't making any progress. So again, in that session, I did some deeper work to see if we could identify what was responsible for his smoking. What he realized was that he had shot a friend of his when he was 28 in a hunting accident. The guy didn't die, but at the time he spent 6 or 8 weeks in intensive care, and my client felt so guilty that he basically started smoking at the time as a way of killing himself. He didn't think that he deserved a good life. So here I'm talking about, you don't need to smoke to fit in. There's other ways to manage stress. I wasn't even in the ballpark. Now, the interesting thing about this case is that the client himself didn't even know that that event was having an impact on him, just like the belly button client, just like the missing dog client. Sometimes when clients come to see me, they do know where their symptoms stem back to. Other times people have no clue. He didn't withhold that story from me during the consultation because he didn't want me to know it. He really didn't realize it was still having an effect on him. This guy was still his best friend, was still in his life. There was no bad blood between them. It was a non-event as far as he was concerned. So sometimes we can have things going on a subconscious level that we're not aware of. The subconscious is a bit of a different animal. It processes things differently than we do intellectually. So again, any one of these clients that I just shared with you, we would have gotten nowhere if I stuck to giving them suggestions. We needed to figure out what was going on underneath the surface and address that first before the client could take in suggestions. With this last client who had shot his friend, once we worked through the guilt that he had at that experience and I created the hypnotic argument and presented it to his subconscious, not only did he quit smoking, he started losing weight and he looked into a career change. These are other things that he had been stuck in. He didn't think he deserved a good life, so he was keeping himself held back in other areas as well. Why isn't it changing? You just saw me trying to flick over to the next slide and not being able to get it going. But I didn't want to record the whole thing, so you heard me singing away at the end. So, my approach. My approach is to let the client go to whatever depth they're comfortable with. I want the client to understand that it's up to them. I'm not going to try to push them to go to a depth that feels unnatural for them. And actually, from my perspective, I'd rather work with people who are kind of in a mid-range of hypnosis for a couple of reasons. I can do more with them. If somebody's super deep, they can't follow me, they can't do exercises inside their mind, and because they sometimes have amnesia for the session, they don't even know what to look for as far as results after the session is over. So I like people to go to their own natural depth where they're comfortable, and I prefer kind of a mid-range of hypnosis so that they can do things inside their mind, they know what to look for after the session, we can do kind of interactive work. Once they're in hypnosis, I prove to them that they're in hypnosis so that they don't question what's going on. Remember, if they're thinking, is this hypnosis? I don't think I'm there yet. This is bogus. That's going to undo our work. And so I do a little challenge to show them that even though they're listening, even though they're following me, even though they're not unconscious or unasleep, they're actually taking in and responding to suggestions. So I let them go to whatever their depth is that they're comfortable with. I show them that they're in hypnosis. And then I move on to identifying and addressing the underlying cause of their symptoms. Now, in part, I'm doing this during our free consultation. I'm taking a good thorough history, figuring out what's going on for them. But I'm also doing it in hypnosis as well, because as the smoking client that I talked about earlier proved, a client doesn't necessarily know all of the things that may be contributing to their symptoms when I talk to them outside of hypnosis. Once I've identified what the underlying cause is, I give hypnotic argument to reframe the event that has had an impact on them, and then I follow up with suggestions and techniques that appeal to both the conscious and the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is the creative mind. Here's another problem with giving suggestions. The subconscious is not the language-using part of the mind. If I'm speaking to the part of the mind that is creative and symbolic, and is the part where our imagination comes from, in language, it's a mismatch. So I'm using a lot of metaphors and visualizations and symbolism to speak to the subconscious, but I'm also giving hypnotic argument and suggestion that speak to the conscious mind. And this is because when a client is in hypnosis, both parts of the mind are involved. It's not like when you're in hypnosis, your conscious mind is completely gone. They're still paying attention, they're still following along. So I'm giving suggestions and doing techniques that appeal to both sides of the mind. I also believe in providing a lot of psychoeducation to the client. I like the client to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I want the client to know that there's a method to my madness. So I'm kind of explaining things to the clients along the way as well. Now this helps to get the client's buy-in. If they understand why and how a technique works, that makes it work even better. Now, I want to share some testimonials that I've gotten from my clients, and this isn't about bragging. This is the kind of result that people who take my training get. What I'm teaching works. So this first one was from a client of mine who loved taking cruises. The only problem was she had a terrible fear of water. So we did a few sessions around her fear of water, and this was an email that she wrote to me afterwards. Dear Linda, you may recall I went through a couple of sessions with you because I had a terrible fear of water and could not enjoy a cruise even though I did go on many. I just want to let you know I'm writing you from aboard the Golden Princess and that I have absolutely no fears on this trip. I'm able to swim in the pools, walk on the deck, look at the horizon, watch the waves going by, and enjoy everything, even 4.5 days crossing the Pacific to Hawaii and back to Los Angeles. I am enjoying the sea for the first time in 16 cruises. I'm even thinking of booking another cruise. Thank you so much, Lorraine. I've actually got goosebumps reading that to you. It's just so satisfying and thrilling to hear this kind of feedback from a client. And again, this isn't me. This is the techniques that I use. That's another testimonial that I got from a client who had a terrible fear of heights. I wanted to update you about my recent trip to Mexico and the success of my hypnotherapy sessions with you. I was able to fly to Mexico and home without a care. It was so nice to be able to enjoy the flight in a normal, relaxing way. In fact, I slept most of the trip home, something I was never able to do previously. Without fear or hesitation, I was able to climb open stairs, go into small confined spaces, lean over cliffs and look down, snorkel in an underground river system and the ocean, and I even went parasailing. Oh, there's those goosebumps again. I have to tell you that all of my friends and family that joined us on the trip were equally surprised by what I was able to do. I have one more session with you. We did this in 5 sessions, and I'm now trying to decide which of my other several quirks you can fix for me. Thank you so much for putting my fears to rest. Dawn C., Fear of Heights. This was a woman who had a horse that was so difficult to ride that even trainers couldn't ride it, and she'd gotten bucked off this horse a few times. Now, she no longer had that horse, but she had a second horse, and her poor subconscious, because of the first horse, was saying, hell no, we're not riding that horse, and she had this huge fear. So we did one session helping her subconscious to understand the difference between horse A and horse B, and I got this email the next day. She was literally back on the horse. Hi, Linda. Not sure if it's normal that people update you, but I rode my horse today with absolutely no hesitation or angst. Never thought once of anything bad happening, and my horse was so relaxed as well. It was such a wonderful feeling. I felt like the old me. I still want another session and maybe more. I'm super excited for my future. Thank you, JC Victoria. Now, this last testimonial really means a lot to me. This was a young lady who came to see me who had post-traumatic stress disorder. She had been basically assaulted by her boss and was given medication because she was freaking out about this assault that interacted with other medication that she was on, ending her up in a psychiatric ward, tied down, and really what she called abused by the medical system. When she first came to see me, she was having daily panic attacks, really terrible panic attacks. She couldn't even look me in the eye. She was so collapsed. And so this testimonial is really meaningful for me. When I first came to see you, I was so afraid to ask for help because of fear of being institutionalized again. I believed I had a list of disorders that could not be cured. I was having flashbacks and panic attacks so terrifying and out of control, it was frightening for my whole family. But you were the first person I knew I could trust because you proved it to me. You were the first person I have experienced empathy and compassion from when it came to my mental health. After just a few sessions, the screaming and cowering panic attacks were under control. You also helped me to realize that there is nothing wrong with me. No lifelong disorders or labels, just normal reactions to life situations, and that gave me a lot of hope. You're an authentic, compassionate, and very smart woman, and I believe the world needs more people like you. You've inspired me to make a change in the system. Thank you for giving me hope when I felt the end for me was near. I know now that my end is far off. I have a purpose now, and with my experience in mind, I can make a difference. So she's decided that she's going to go into working in mental health, helping people to deal with the type of situations that she's gone through herself. This work is so rewarding. It's fascinating work. People are fascinating. Everybody has amazing stories. How the mind works is endlessly fascinating. And these testimonials are the kind of testimonials I see all the time. And again, it's not about me. It's about the fact that hypnosis is really effective, and the tools and skills that I'm giving you, the techniques I'm teaching you, the approach that I use, it actually works. So if you're interested in training, please reach out. You can email me at info@horizoncenterhypnotherapy.com, or you can visit that website and have a look at the resources, the different types of programs that I have, and see what feels like a fit for you. I also offer for anybody who's looking into hypnotherapy training that you can test drive my first unit for free. So go to horizoncenterhypnotherapy.com and you'll see a sign-up sheet where you can get into that material. This gives you an opportunity to have a look at some of the videos, see what my style is, get a sense of my approach. There's no obligation to go ahead with the training, but again, I want you to be able to make the most informed decision possible. Thank you so much for viewing this video. I appreciate you taking time to check it out. Bye-bye.